My name's Reese, if you've not met me before, and I apologize for anything I might say or do in the future. But welcome, welcome, welcome. We're going to talk about vertical gardening today. That's just gardening that goes up. This is an example of vertical gardening. This is an outside example of vertical gardening. I saw vertical gardening once, a wall of moss in a bathroom, which you would be amazed the smell in that bathroom. It was wonderful. But it's just a panel with stuff growing up. Usually it's either got hydroponic substrate or just plain old, even dirt in gutters that's set up like a hydroponic setup. But this is typically what you might come in contact with. Can you see, dear? Okay. Vertical garden systems, pocket systems. These systems utilize fabric or felt pockets. You know how you have the little organizers that you put on the back of your door and you fill them with shoes? Well, they have organizers for plants the same way. You can put a little bit of dirt in the puppies. A lot of times they are waterproof. You can hang them in your kitchens, you can hang them in your bathrooms, you can hang them on your patios, but you can plant plants in those just like you are outside. This is particularly nice if you want to plant a bunch of herbs in your kitchen. You have adequate, you still need adequate sunlight, you still need adequate heat, and a modicum of water for your pocket systems. But this is one way to do it. You can do 6 of them, you can do 10 of them, you can do 12, you just have a thing of pockets. Modular systems, these systems consist of individual planters that can be stacked or arranged to create a vertical garden. You've all seen the strawberry planters that you stack on top of one another. The reason for that is you don't want your strawberries sitting on the dirt. It's not good for them. So if your strawberries are hanging over the edge of this vertical planter, they're not sitting on dirt, they're not being exposed to soil-borne diseases or organisms, bugs, pests, whatever. Hydroponic systems, that's when your plant is suspended in something called a rock wool or another kind of medium, and that's holding the roots in place while you run a small bit of liquid through the gutter or through the hydroponic system, and that absorbs the water up, and they get, and the water that you're giving these plants is usually full of nutrients, minerals, fertilizer, nitrogen, potassium, phosphorus. So it's getting what it needs. It's getting the sunlight, it's getting the heat, and it's getting the liquid nutrition. This is a liquid nutrition, so it's on a feeding tube more or less, to continue to grow. But again, we're not leaving our plant lay on the dirt and be exposed to soil-borne diseases or pests. So, vertical gardening plant choices: ferns, pothos, that's your standard houseplant. Philodendron, again, standard houseplant. Peperomia, creeping fig, Swedish ivy. These are all houseplants. They're not going to tolerate being outside over the winter months or anytime when it's cold. If you live in Florida, that's a whole different ball game. Or if you live in southern Florida, zone 8, 9, 10. Parts of 8, 9, 10. Flowers. Begonias are a great plant for vertical garden. Impatiens, known petunias, geraniums, and trailing verbena. Typically in this area, the verbena that will do the best is as far as an annual, well, it's an annual / perennial, would be your homestead verbena. The other ones will not tolerate the cold weather temperatures, and so don't bother with those. There's also a standing verbena that's purple, but that will come back year after year. That's a perennial. Herbs and vegetables. All of your leafy herbs and vegetables. That would be your lettuce, your spinach. Your fruits would be your strawberries. Mint. This is a great way to contain your mint because you're not going to be able to contain it any other way. And there's lots of different mints. There's chocolate mint. There's spearmint. There's peppermint. And all those mints will take off from their root cuttings. And you'll end up with a whole yard full of mint, which is a good thing if you want to cut the grass and smell mint. It's great for your respiratory system. Thyme, again, that's drought tolerant, and chives. Chives are a versatile herb with a mild onion flavor. There's also a garlic, similar to chives. It's called society garlic, and it's considered a weed, but it does have a mild garlic taste, and you can eat it on your baked potato. It's great. Succulents and cacti. I always have killed my succulents and cacti till I noticed that, till I was told at the Nashville Lawn and Garden Show by the guy that grows succulents that the best way to grow them is in a sharp, drained soil or soil mix and get them off the ground. He said, get them out of the ground. Now, I know other people that have a really good success rate with growing them in the ground. I'm just not one of them. So I've pulled all of them up and made sure that there's a lot of rock in the top layer of the soil, so I get a lot of really good drainage. And that's helped for my succulents. Sedums are drought tolerant and have a lot of good colors. If you live out in Las Casas or any place that has a lot of rock in the soil, who knew that Middle Tennessee had a lot of rock in the soil? You'll see just sheets of sedum, that really nice pink sedum that disappears. By this time of the year, it has disappeared, but it'll be back next year. And there'll be these sheets of sedums growing on top of the rock. Echeveria, rosette-forming succulents with beautiful geometric shapes. They prefer sun and well-drained soil. Sempervivum, hens and chicks. Hardy succulents that reproduce readily, forming clusters of chicks around the hen. They prefer full sun and well-drained soil. I saw a really great thing at a nursery, I think it was in North Carolina, where they took the sheets, rock, thin rock, the kind we use for these rock walls, and they put them on edge. And they packed soil between each rock, and then they planted their sedums in that rock. So they were in soil, but they were suspended above the dirt, and boy was it pretty. That rock just growing in those crevices between, or the hens and chicks growing in those crevices between those rocks. That was really nice. I suggest you try it. I did, and it's doing great. So I may finally be successful at growing hens and chicks. String of pearls. Senecio royalianus, string of pearls, a unique succulent with trailing stems adorned with bead-like leaves. I've never had any success growing those outside. Good luck to you. Good luck. And then you have your Christmas cactus. I don't need to describe that to y'all. You know exactly what it looks like. There's also an Easter cactus, same genus and species, just blooms at a different time. And there is a Thanksgiving cactus. They have a difference in the shape of the leaves, and if you look it up online, you can see that little difference. One has no points on the outside edges, one has one or two, and one has multiples. Trellises. One of the supports for your vertical garden. Is it sturdy enough? You can grow vegetable vines on your trellises if you so desire. And so some of the vegetable vines that you can grow are like pumpkins, and they need quite a bit of support. One of the ways to support a big squash or a big, or any kind of squash, is to use mesh bags. The bags you get from your onions when you buy them in the store, the bags that or an old pair of hosiery. I don't know if anybody has hosiery anymore. I'm not talking to you guys. But
that's what I need.
Yeah, and that'll hold your fruit up there while it's still getting sun and it's still getting nutrients from the mother plant. Now, as an aside, anybody that's ever been to Walt Disney and gone on that little ride through the growing area, in the water ride where you go in the boat and you see all the stuff growing, they have an area where they have squash growing, and they have taken molds and put them around the growing squash. And the squash grows into the shape of the mold. So if you take your face and you make a mold, and then you clap that on that squash, it won't last forever, but it'll be very amusing while it does. What kind of plants do you want to grow? Climbing rose requires a different kind of support than a sweet pea. Pole beans need a different support from a tomato or a cucumber plant. Some of the fruits require sunshine. Some do not, in order to ripen. Don't grapes require a modicum of sunshine in order to ripen? Okay. So you want the leaves back a little bit so they get that. So they get the maximum amount of sunshine. Tomatoes? Do they require a bunch of sunshine in order to ripen? Okay. I don't know that it makes much difference for peas or beans, but okay. Where will this support be located in the garden? Decorative plant supports can serve as points of interest in the garden. Arbors are great as marking an entry. Anytime you go between two spots in the garden and you walk through the center, it gives you a kind of sense of peace. If you walk down an alley, if you walk down a series of trees, small trees, I don't know if you've ever done this, but whenever I see a path that's bordered with crepe myrtles, and I just walk down between them, it promotes a real sense of peace. If you walk down an alley like at Cheekwood, when you go to the Japanese garden and you see all that bamboo growing at the sides, it really promotes peace. But that's just me. And so freestanding trellises can provide privacy in a large open area, and obelisks provide a focal point at the end of a pathway. If you want to support cucumbers in your elevated raised bed, grow tomatoes in a patio planter, you'll want to choose a support that fits your available space. So it's all about aesthetics and food. More trellises. Bamboo trellises, if anybody needs bamboo, I have a neighbor who has a plethora of bamboo, and she's happy to get rid of it. There's one of your, I think that's a watermelon in a bag. And you see where in the background you have butternut squash growing up, being suspended on a trellis too. Arbors. Create a pathway for strolling, spruce up a picket fence, boost your greenery, enclose a walkway, and develop a special side yard. At the present time, I have an arbor that's covered by grapevines. There are no fruit on the grapevines. I don't know why, but it looks great though. It really looks nice. Teepees. Teepee trellis is a standalone structure made of long, thin poles such as bamboo. Teepees are especially handy for growing vining plants like pole beans, garden peas, nasturtiums, black-eyed Susan vines, and fragrant sweet peas. Fragrant sweet peas usually grow in the spring, and they like a little bit more shade. When I say fragrant, that means that they don't form a pod that you eat. They just form a pod that form a flower that smells really, really good. A teepee trellis can be modified for apartment gardening by placing a shorter version inside a half wine barrel or any other container. Now, a really great thing to do with this for the kids or the grandkids is leave an opening, plant stuff up the sides, and let it climb up there, and they can use that as a little hideout. Yeah, as a hideout, as a tent, and you can read to them in there, whatever. It'll be their little room. Pergola. A pergola is like a gazebo, but it doesn't have a solid roof. It's a structure that provides shelter and some shade from the elements. It's designed to let in some sun at least part of the time. It can be freestanding or built onto an existing structure. Pergolas are one of my favorites. I really like sitting underneath them. Arch. Again, we get the sense of walking through something, which promotes a lot of peace in your head. Of course, there's a lot of stuff in some of our heads. Garden arches, garden archway with gate, garden bed with arch trellis, and cattle panel. Pat's an expert on cattle panels, archways, because she's built them on a regular basis out at the Ag Center. Obelisks. More decorative than anything else, but still structurally performs. Vertical gardening saves ground space, allowing for more diverse planting scheme in smaller areas. The visual interest is obelisk creates height and dimensionality in the garden, enhancing its visual appeal. I have an obelisk out in the garden that I hung a bell on the inside, and that's kind of fun. So you can have all kinds of fun with this stuff. I put a fake light fixture in one of my arches out there. It's for the hummingbirds. They never go to it, so I just filled it with water. It just hangs there. But I mean, my garden. Well, you were there. You know how much junk's out there. An obelisk creates height and dimensionality in the garden, enhancing its visual appeal. You have improved air circulation. Some of your stuff's going to require air circulation. Anything that gets a downy mildew wants more air circulation coming through. Accessibility, climbing plants on an obelisk can be more accessible for harvesting, pruning, and maintenance. And some of us old people really appreciate not having to get down on the ground. I'm not saying I won't get down on the ground, but then I crawl to the door and grab my way up. Cages, pest protection. Cages help keep our animals out, like rabbits, deer, and squirrels that may damage your plants or eat them all together. Weather shielding. They provide some shelter from harsh weather conditions such as strong winds and heavy rain, which can damage fragile plants. My grandfather used to put a cage like this around his trees out front and fill it just chock full of leaves. Because, well, that was Ohio, so it got a little bit more chilly in the wintertime than what we got here. But that really helped. It saved his peaches. Support for climbing plants. Cages can support vertical growth for plants like tomatoes and peas, maximizing space and ensuring adequate sunlight and air circulation. Disease prevention. By keeping plants off the ground, cages reduce the risk of soil-borne diseases affecting your crops. So, and I wished I'd used cages more often. Again, this looks just like an obelisk, but now it's called an A-frame or a lean-to. Ability to access from outside as well as inside. That one is in a knot garden, which is a word for a English-styled garden where they have intricate patterns of plants and plants bordering other plants. Tower, again, obelisk, or the one on the far side is a hydroponics tower. Hydroponics towers, you feel, again, we use either rock wool or a lightweight soil that, and the water just, and nutrient solution just drips down from the outside. These are, you can make these, but I am not going to. If I am going to employ something like this, I will probably buy it, just because it'll be one more project that never gets done. And the tower, plants do not lay on the soil, and you avoid. We're right back to avoiding soil-borne diseases. Scale can be avoided by using towers and not having plants lay close to the ground. Some of the plants that are most, when you're looking for a plant and to try to figure out what kind of disease you got or what kind of pests are hitting it, when you look up the name of the plant, so euonymus is incredibly susceptible to scale. And now crepe myrtles are having quite a bit of scale. Usually the scale is white, but it can be other colors. So when you're looking up a disease for a plant, you look it up by, first you go to the name of the plant, and then you go down to diseases. That's the easiest way to figure out what kind of disease you got. Hanging gardens. These are your small scale, big hanging gardens that are just exquisite. Usually in landscape architecture structures that you see out and about. And I would absolutely kill for something like that. But I don't have the technical ability to keep it alive. Somebody's watering that up top and letting it stray on down, and I'm not getting on a ladder for anybody anymore. So y'all, you know, they take a substrate. Usually it'll be like, well, if they'll take like wire, like chicken wire, or a bigger spaced wire, and lay it over a substrate or a few inches off of a substrate. The substrate can be the rock wool, it can be a soil that's held in place by another set of wire, and they just poke through and put the plant in.
In the wire.
Were you ever there when we had container gardening stuff? And what you do is with those cocoa mats, you have the wire basket and you have a cocoa mat.
Yes.
And in order to plant those big balls of flowers or those big balls of plants, you come in from the bottom and you cut a slit. So you got your wire holding the cocoa mat. You got your cocoa mat holding the growing medium, whether it's soil or something else. You cut a hole, you stick the dirt part of it up in there, and then you do that all over, all around the outside and on top. But first, when you do the bottom, then you put a little bit of soil in or a little bit of growing medium. Then you go to the next level and you cut and you put your plant in. Then you fill with your growing medium. Then you go to the next level, and then when you get to the top, you put them all in the top. So when you water it and it grows, you end up with a ball. If that's what you want. I mean, I like that look. And usually I see them in municipalities where they have them hanging from poles and they go around with a truck and they water them with a truck. You know, and there's a guy up on the truck going, and they do it every day. Ohio is really great for this. You need a back thing to keep it from rotting the material it's sitting on. And then you need a substrate that it's going to grow into, through which you can either slow down a nutrient that's dripping through, or slow it down, or continually to do it, you know. And then you have your plant that's growing, and eventually your plant's going to die, dependent upon the plant. But nothing lives forever, as we well know. So, and in plants they call that senescence. That's when a plant dies, it's senescence. When a leaf dies, it's senescence. And so then you still got to be able to pull that plant out and put another one in. And God help you if you're up here.
Yeah, get a ladder.
Yeah. Well, you need an iron worker license to get up there. But yeah, that's how it works.
Gotcha.
I mean, in my mind, input is taken and appreciated, always.
It is great.
These are hanging gardens. This is the pocket style. This is a picture. No, this isn't my picture. But this is how it's done. This is the pockets where they took. Now, orchids are epiphytes. They grow on the tops of other things. They're not a parasite. They're not sucking in. Like if I'm an orchid, I'm not putting my tendrils, my roots, or anything into the tree I'm growing on if I'm out in the jungle in Costa Rica. But that would be fine. But I'm not doing that. What I'm doing is I'm growing in the detritus, all the bark that's fallen down, all the dirt that's fallen down, all the dead leaves that have fallen down. And in the jungle, everything deteriorates really quickly, rots really quickly. So the nutrients that's in that old stuff is available for the new stuff. So the orchid's putting its little roots in there and its tendrils in there, and it's just sitting there absorbing the nutrients out of that stuff. But in this case, they've put those orchids into these little pockets, and they're growing in these little pockets. You could also grow orchids on a board where you just give them a little fertilizer with a little water, and you can just take a frame and suspend the orchids on a board and hang it on the wall, and it will grow. There's a lady that's on the Tennessee Gardener whose name is Tammy Allgood. She's really knowledgeable, very incredible, and she has an orchid greenhouse. She's also in my garden club, should anyone want to come to one of the meetings and meet her. And she grows orchids on a board. And it's phenomenal. They are so beautiful. And they're so healthy. But, okay. So this is really exciting to me. But yeah. Hanging gardens in nature. This looks like a canyon out west. When you walk down the creeks, or the small canyons that are dry creeks out west in some of the sandstone country in Arizona and Utah and New Mexico. You can, when the water hits the ground, especially this looks like sandstone, the water hits the ground and it percolates through the sandstone down to a harder level of rock. when it hits a harder level of rock, it moves on the top of that rock. It no longer goes down, it goes out. And when it gets to a spot where there's air and sunlight, it seeps. And the seeds will take advantage of that seepage, and they will grow in those crevices where the sandstone meets a harder rock. And these are absolutely gorgeous, just gorgeous. I lived in Arizona for a while. This is what we would see when we hiked in the canyons around Lake Powell in Arizona. It's just exquisite. The same thing happens, well, never mind. I diverge. Who, me? Okay, here's a living wall. And you can see the metal, the framework. You can see the little metal? See that? Can you see?
Yep.
Okay. Okay. This changes everything about this space. Changes the temperature, it changes the amount of oxygen. It's just completely calming and wonderful. Living wall indoors. This is a vegetable living wall. That's, I don't know what's on the top. It looks like petunias or pansies. But the rest of those are all herbs and leafy vegetables. Your spinaches, your lettuces, and that's just a plain old skid. I call them skids. What's
Pallet.
yeah, pallet that somebody sealed up the backside. And the other one, that looks like a pre-made job, and I think those are all tropical plants. Those aren't edible plants. So it humidifies. It's a great place for herbs, a great place to grow greens. Every time I try spinach or lettuce in the ground, but I'm not as good as you, I end up with a sodden, nasty, bug-ridden mess. So I'm sticking with flowers. And it purifies the air. And just be sure to not let your water saturate your walls or your floors. We have a high degree of, we have a high mistake quotient here. If it was me, I'd have to replace the floor. I mean, honest. Living art. Oh. Those are bleeding hearts up there. This was evidently done by a designer. You have a grid work. It's like square foot gardening on its side, and they just made an artwork out of it. Freestanding vertical garden out here outside. That looks like begonias. I'm not sure what that is. Not sure what that is. Down there is that purple wandering Jew. Again, my nomenclature is way off right now, but that's pretty good looking. Now, I went to Philadelphia and to Longwood Gardens, and in Longwood Gardens they had a room called the Cascade Gardens, and it was designed by this Roberto Burrell Marx. And this isn't a tourist thing. I'm not trying to introduce you to. It's just to fill out my vertical gardening thing. But he's the father of modern landscape design, a transformative figure whose innovations redefined the global design ethos. He died in 1994. This was at Longwood Gardens. They had a whole room where they took one of his gardens and redid it in this room. And this room was all vertical gardens plus a little bit of on the ground. Unlike any other art form, a garden is designed for the future and for future generations. That is the conservatory that they just built at Longwood Gardens behind. But this little Cascade Garden was just as sweet as it could be. Very humid. It was tropical in nature. You felt like you were in the tropics or in like Costa Rica when you went there. Those are just mounted in this permeable material on the wall, going up the wall. A vertical garden. Cascade Garden, commissioned in 1989. The Cascade Garden is the only surviving design in North America by Robert Burrell Marx. I'm not pushing Robert Burrell Marx. I'm just pushing. These are all air plants. You can do it. You can do an air plant garden, vertical garden, and then these tropicals right here. You got enough air plants to do that?
No, I always get some.
Okay. That's more, I'm not sure what the names of these plants are, guys, I'm sorry. But we can accept with humility from nature its laws and suggestions, always acknowledging it to be the greatest artist of all, with more to teach than one can learn. More air plants. The Cascade Garden gathers all the elements that have come to define the design, sensibility, and the style of Roberto Burle Marx. It's a microcosm of his life's work. I'd like it to be a microcosm of mine. Again, that's that same plant we've been seeing, but on this one it's doing so well that it's flowering. Looks like it might be a bromeliad in nature, by its nature. The Cascade Garden is a rare work of landscape art that gathers all the iconic elements of a Burle Marx design, reflecting his love of the natural world and the beauty of Brazil's native flora and landscapes. Evidently, this guy was from Brazil. This was a fountain. This stuff was dripping down and then dripping into this water feature and then headed off into another part of the room. It was, Teresa, how great was that room?
Amazing.
She went with me.
Actually, I've got the exact same picture you got right there.
Yeah, yeah. So, that's the end. Any questions on vertical gardens? It's not a lot of material, it's easy. Vertical gardens are easy. Easy to grow, easy to produce fruit, vegetables. Any comments, anything? I don't believe you would sit here and listen to me. I apologize, but thank you. No, thank you. Thank you.